Hi, I'm Stephen Keir. I'm fifth generation in this family business called Akubra Hat Proprietary Limited. I'm currently Managing Director and Chairman of the company, and I have two sisters who are joint owners with me in this factory as well. And I'd like to give you all a tour of our factory and show you how an Akubra hat is made. To start the process of making an Akubra hat, we have to use the raw material, which is rabbit fur. We currently import a lot of rabbit fur from Europe, and we blend different furs together to make a certain mix of hat. Then following on from that, we then put our fur through what we call blowing machines. These blowing machines clean all the hair, bits of dirt and little bits of skin out of the blend that we're trying to make a hat out of. We go up and bring it into our main factory where we form a hat, the hat goes onto a big stainless steel cone which has got lots of little holes in it. Underneath, in the machine, underneath that cone there's a big exhaust fan. It sucks the fur evenly onto the cone. Then basically after that the hat is formed, but it's still dry. We then wet it with a hot water and detergent, which starts the felting process, and the hat is only just able to be handled by human hands, or if it's too rough it'll fall apart. We go on to what we call hardening, and hardening is basically the hats are put in a roll and it's all starting the felting process of friction and shrinking of the hat. They're done quite a few times in this machine before they're taken out onto what is called settling. And settling is the hats are put in rolls again, and they're on what looks as best it can be described as a rolling machine with hot water and steam, and the hats are shrunk. Now each employee has to turn those hats certain ways to make sure that we don't end up with creases in the hats. They're constantly turning the hats and shrinking them in different ways to bring them down to a certain size. After that process we go to our quality control checking table, where we have a man who looks at all the hats for any holes, any lumps of felt, any faults in the hats, and they're rejected at that stage before we move on to our multi-roller machines. These multi-roller machines are all hot water and steam again. They're shrinking the hats in different ways. The employees are turning the hats different ways to make sure that they shrunk in the right directions. And then they go to another machine, we call it an A machine. It's another rolling machine. The hats are going in and out and taken and turned and put back in and turned, and it's all hot water and steam. Some hats are put into what we call a bumping machine, where they're just hammered hard and it helps shrink the hat. And then they're taken to what we call a B machine, which gets the hat back into shape a bit, and it does shrink the hat in certain ways. Once again, it's all the same process, just different machines. After we get to that point, we take the hats over to dyeing machines. So our big dyeing machines fit 200 hats in there at a time. Those hats are in there for 3 to 4 hours in the dyeing process, and they're taken out and taken back to the B machines because they need to be brought back into shape and shrunk down to a certain size that's manageable for that hat in the process later down the track. After they go from this B machine, the hats are dried off overnight, and then they are taken to what we call a shellacking machine, where we squeeze it into the brim of the hat, and then we take it to another machine that squeezes it into the crown of a hat. And once this shellac sets in the hat, it becomes quite stiff, and that's what gives the hats their stiffness. When down the track, anything you need to do with the hat, you can soften it with steam, the shellac will soften up and you can shape it to whatever shape you want to try and make it into. After they've had the shellac put in, we take them to a tipping machine, which the hats are going with a real point in the crown. After they're taken to the tipping machine, go in the machine and they're pulled over a block to round the crown out in the hat. And then we go from the tipping machine to a brimming machine and we break the brim into a hat. Basically it's quite a hands-on, laborious task, but it's an important one. After that we have to take the hats to what we call shower proofing. We put a solution in there to help with rain protection. Then we take our hats to the blocking machine. The hats are clamped around the sides of the hat, a block's put in and the brim's stretched a little bit, and the steam helps soften that up to help us stretch that brim out a little bit and help the block get into the hat properly. And basically that's the blocking process. Overnight the hats are then dried at a certain temperature. The next day we bring the hats out of the drying room and go into what we call a beating machine, and literally it's just bashing the hats till they soften up. So we can then pounce the hats, which is sandpaper on a wheel. The gentleman is feeding the hat through, sanding the long hair off the hat because we want to try and get a nice finish on the hats and we want to get rid of the long hair. So after pouncing, we then go to blocking again. This is a precise blocking machine. Blocks the hats to the exact head size, and also the brims are pulled out to a little bit oversized to give us some excess to round off later, to give us a nice even edge on the brim. They're clamped on again like the other blocking process. After that they go into ironing machines. The ironing machines help set the shellac in the hat. And then we do the crown and the brim in a separate process. Then we move to our sanding machines, where we're trying to sand off any lasting long hair to get rid of all that sort of long hair to give it a nice finish. Those machines are quite old, but they're very good machines, and we have to maintain them very well for them to work properly. We do the crown, we do the brim, and then we take the hats and we blow off any excess dirt. After that we have to shape hats. Some hats are sold with what we call an open crown, other hats are what we call pre-creased. And the pre-creased hats are put in a dish, which is the shape of the crown, an aluminium dish. It's heated up, it's quite warm. The hat softens up to the shape of that dish, and then when we take it out and it cools down, it holds that shape. Certain hats have certain styles, certain crowns, other hats have open crowns, which we don't do that to. Before the war, most of our hats were open crown, and after the war, when hats went out of favour, people had forgotten how to shape a hat, so we'd do it for them. After that we go down, what we call leather in hats, basically putting stitching the leathers inside the hats. Then we're stitching hat bands on the hats. Some hats get what we call brim binding on them, some don't. It just depends on what style you're after. And then we go to the flanging process, which is basically a big bag full of sand heated up by a metal plate. There's a frame for the hat the hat goes in. The frame will be the shape of the brim we're after. The hot bag comes down onto the frame and the hat softens up and shapes to that frame, and then we come out with a perfectly shaped hat. Some hats also get satin linings put in them, and other hats get put a crown tip in them. It just depends on what style is wanted from whoever. We go to the packing section where all our orders are collated together and get ready to be shipped to wherever around Australia or around the world. As you can see, there's a lot of hard work that goes into making these hats. There's a lot of hands-on processes in the whole factory. There's a lot of dedication from a lot of community employees who are coming out with a product that we're all very proud of. And you can see the hard work that goes into making these hats. We hope you get a lot of enjoyment out of wearing yours when you support this great Australian company.